deep, transformative class on the powers of the month of Tevet. I'm very excited to be here. Welcome to everyone who came in person and to everyone who's watching live. We have our artist, Devora, back from Beit Zayit for Kabbalah art. We're doing Tohu Kabbalah art. The theme of today is containing space or creating space to contain our Tohu energy. We're going to talk soon about Tohu, which is the world of chaos. Aliza, are they going to do the music? Thanks. I get very ADD and distracted. Okay, so the month of Tevet. If you're new to this monthly series, we have a monthly series based on Sefer Yetzirah, one of the earliest Kabbalistic texts that goes through every month and the shifting energies of every month. Every month comes with a new order of the letter of Hashem's name, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. There's 12 ways to arrange it. In this month, it's Hey Yud and then Hey Vav, which is usually it's Yud Hey, and then that's flipped backwards, and then it's Vav Hey, and now it's Hey Vav. It's again backwards. Now, usually I don't get into the letters of Hashem's name because I have no idea what they're very spiritual concepts, and I like to focus on the more practical elements or relevant life messages. But it is interesting to note that this is a month of backwards energy, a little bit of a backwards energy. So the Yud and Hey and everything is backwards. There's a little bit of a tohu, chaotic backwards energy. Okay, so every month on Rosh Chodesh, we have this shifting of the divine life flow into this month. We have a new life flow, a new type of energy, and within that energy contains so much potential that we can tap into in this month and grow through. And Sefer Yetzirah gives us this, the overview. So the overview is in your source sheet. We have the name of the month, Tevet. We have the astrological sign of the month, which in this month it's a Capricorn, which is the Gedi, which is also sourced in Torah. It says Hashem put the Gedi in the universe to lead this month. We have the number of the month is 10, which is a holy number because 10 is the 10 sphiro. The letter of the month, it says Hashem sends the chayu, the energy flow, in every month through one of the letters of the Aleph Beit, forms the month. So Hashem formed this month through the letter Ayin, which is vision, wisdom, and then there's the Shevet of every month. The tribe of every month is there's one tribe connected to each of the 12 months. The tribe this month is Dan, the Shevet of Dan. And then we have the permutation of Hashem's name. And then my favorite, which is the sense of the month. There's 12 soul senses. Last month we had dreams, which is one of my favorites. And this month it's actually used to be my least favorite. It was anger, and we learned so much about anger is like avodah zara. So how could you have a whole month dedicated to ka'as, roges? What does that even mean? So for the first few years when I taught this, I was like, I'm not going to talk about that. I'll talk about the astrological sign and other things. But as I went deeper and deeper into teachings on anger, I discovered so much wisdom on anger. And what it is, we're going to talk about it later, but the anger that we're talking about in this month is not the expression, the outward expression of how you act when you're angry, when you scream or you are not, when you become someone else. It's the inner expression or sensation or experience of feeling angry in our bodies. And we're going to talk about that and the tikkun of that and the elevation of that and utilizing that powerful energy for positive. Okay, now one thing to know about Tevet before we go in. Let's start. Tevet, the name Tevet comes in the deep sources from Tov Bas, which means, first of all, it's good. It starts with the Tet. So it's a good month because Tet is Tov. But it's also Tov Bas, which means a time that's good for physical intimacy, for oneness or physical closeness. So it's a very physical month. Tevet, let's go from outer layers and go inner. Auspicious days or history in the month of Tevet. First, we know there's the 10th of Tevet, the fast of Tevet, which is coming up this Friday, which is when Nebuchadnezzar surrounded the walls of the Beis Hamikdash. It was the first step that led to the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, so we fast on that day. Then other thing we have is the Rambam's Yartzeit on the 20th of Tevet, and then we have two Chabad days. We have the 5th of Tevet when the books that were stolen from the library of 770 were returned. So it's Chabad International Book Day. My husband bought 38 books for the Chabad, for the shul, and for our kids, every kid, and buys a new book that you'll learn and internalize. And then there's the 24th of Tevet, which is the passing of Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya. So that's the history. When you go deeper into Tevet, we have Tevet meaning Tov, which is also connected to good because Gedi, the sign of the month, is 17. It's Gimel, Dalet, and Yud are 17. It's also Gematria Tov, so we have a lot of goodness in this month. But then we have Tevet is actually Gematria 411, which is Tohu. And Tohu is an overall theme of this month. Now, what is Tohu? Tohu is a word in the Torah that comes in the second verse in the Torah, right? Bereshit bara Elokim et hashmayim v'haaretz. The second verse says, v'haaretz haisa tohu v'vohu. The world was empty and chaotic. Tohu is chaos, and Kabbalists tell us that Tohu represents the world, before Hashem created our worlds, Hashem created other worlds. And those worlds shattered, and those previous worlds before our worlds are the worlds of Tohu. In the world of Tohu, one of the reasons that the worlds of Tohu shattered were that there was so much infinite light. Hashem put all this light into this world that couldn't contain it, and the world exploded. And the Kabbalah gives the example if you pour hot water into a glass cup that's not suited for it, it would shatter a thin glass, it would explode. It would shatter from containing that energy that it couldn't contain. So that world is called Shaviras, that concept. So I'm going to teach you a few deep Kabbalistic ideas, and we're going to internalize them in our personal life experiences. The first word is Tohu, which means chaos. And we'll get to how that reflects in our experience of life. Then we have Shviras HaKelim. Shviras HaKelim is when the vessels shatter because there's so much light, and we're going to connect that to anger in a moment. And then we have this other concept that connects to this week's Parsha. We have a few connections in Tevet in this week's Parsha. One of them is the idea of Bir Nitzotzos, the tikkun. What happened when why do we have to know about the previous worlds? Kabbalists tell us that these worlds shattered, but this powerful energy and Hashem recreated our world. And how did He make our world not shatter? Our world is called tikkun. And in our world of tikkun, the light is much more finite and limited. It's not this powerful, huge light of tohu. It's a much more finite light, and that can be contained in the vessels of the world, and therefore we don't shatter and explode. So the world of tikkun is a light that is diminished in a way. It's covered up. There's more layers of he'elem, of coverings, right? That's what we call it olam. That olam, which comes from he'elem, which means coverings of Hashem's infinite light. So that we don't shatter and explode from the infinity of the light that's too much for the vessel, right? Now, the tikkun of one of the avodas of our world is that we learn in Kabbalah that these sparks, when these worlds shattered and exploded, the sparks, imagine the glass shattering, and into our world fell two or pach nitzutzot. So this is another concept. There's 288 sparks of intense, powerful energy that fell into our world, and they were disguised or covered up in the physical, materialistic objects of our world. This is like the basic Kabbalah of why we exist in this world, and we're here to uncover these sparks that are hidden in the material objects of our world. And when we uncover all these sparks, which mean, how do we uncover these? Then Mashiach comes. What does it mean to uncover sparks? It means to, wherever you go, whenever Hashem sends you and puts you in this world, wherever you end up randomly traveling, we're meant to do Bir Nitzotzo. So that's the next Kabbalistic idea. So he said, Tohu, Shaviras HaKelim, Rapach Nitzutzo, the 288 fallen sparks, and then Bir Nitzotzo, which means elevating the sparks, refining the sparks. It means that wherever we go, and we encounter, we're supposed to utilize anything physical in our environment for something holy. So we go to a coffee shop, we have a shir. You're going on a hike, you speak about Hashem's greatness, you say a pasuk. That's why little kids memorize the 12 psukim. We say a parak of Tehillim. You purify the place by revealing its inner intent of godliness. When you go on a river, you make a bracha, and then you're elevating the space that you're in and the objects that you use, and you're revealing this godly sparks. It's connected to this week's Parsha because we learn that the deeper Kabbalistic intent of going down to Mitzrayim in these weeks was for when Hashem promised Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, your children will go down. For what purpose? So that they come out with tremendous wealth. These wealth, why do we have to go down to get wealth? Because in this wealth that was taken out of Mitzrayim was hidden tremendous, powerful, godly sparks. And the intent was that we take these godly sparks, we bring it into the realm of Kedusha, and then when all that is done, we ready the world for Mashiach, which is literally just revealing that light which was hidden now in Galus. We just have the same world, but the infinity of Hashem, the oneness of existence is covered. And once we elevate these sparks, Hashem can now uncover this veil over the oneness of creation. And we are living in this era of Mashiach where we see the unity and connection and presence of Hashem in every single thing. In short, which is way deeper than that, right? We could spend an entire class on each of these concepts. I'm just giving you very tiny bites of them. How is this connected to the Parsha? One of the deeper reasons for the famine in last week's Parsha and the brothers having to come down into Egypt was Hashem made it easy to, I think I mentioned this already, but by having a famine in the rest of the world and only by Yosef planning to have all the food in Egypt, what ended up happening was that people from all over the world who were hungry came down to Egypt, the only place that had food because Yosef stored food for 7 years. And now the wealth basically was a funnel. It was a funnel to funnel all the wealth, which contains sparks of holiness, into Mitzrayim to make it easy for us to take out and elevate. So essentially, there was like this ingathering of wealth that everyone sold all their wealth to get food, and now all the wealth has been funneled to make it easy for us to go into Egypt, take this wealth out with us when we leave Mitzrayim. We'll speak about this later in the plague of darkness, and then bring it to Kedusha. And obviously, if everything would have gone perfectly according to plan, we would have used all that wealth to build the Mishkan and to utilize a holy life, and Mashiach would have come into the Beis Hamikdash. And but obviously there was a plan of Hashem and more steps along the way. Oh, that's so pretty. It's gorgeous. Okay. So that is the concepts. Now we're going to get to why we're talking about Tohu. So we learned that Tevet is Gematria Tohu. It's also the month of Esav. And Esav comes from Tohu. So why is Tevet the month of Esav? Okay. The Zohar tells us that a few weeks ago in Parshas Vayishlach, when Esav and Yaakov met, I may have even told you this, shared this a few weeks ago, and Esav was so excited. He's like, let's travel together now, let's live together, let's bring Mashiach, right? And in the deeper Hasidic idea. And Yaakov is like, no, the world is not ready. You go your way, I'll go my way, and we'll meet at Har Seir when the time is right, which is going to happen when Mashiach comes. It says, like, there's a nevuah about meeting at Har Seir. But in the deeper Hasidic ideas, Esav, was saying, well, like, let's you take all your wealth and my wealth, which is like all our sparks, and together we'll like elevate the whole world, with your way and my way. And Yaakov was like, no, there's too much, you go your way, you take care. And what happened, that the Zohar says at that moment, is that they divided between themselves all the realms of time and space. And Esav took half and Yaakov took half, and he's like, you deal with your half, I'll deal with my half. So the months of the year were actually divided between them in the Zohar. So Yaakov took the first of every, Nisan, Iyar, and Sivan, the first of the warm months, and Esav took Tammuz, Av, and Elul, which is where all the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash happened. Then Yaakov took Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Hanukkah, all the Chagim, and Esav took Tevet, Shvat, and Adar. And so Esav got those months. I actually recently heard that the harshest month is Tevet because Adar is transformed through Purim, and also Elul is transformed through Teshuvah. But Teves and Tammuz are like the harshest months, where we have the most Esav energy. So these months are under the domain of Esav. So this seems negative, like, oh no, like people who are born in this month are like, oh no, am I under the realm of Esav? It's actually a really powerful month, and that's what we're talking about, Tohu energy, because Esav energy. So we have these 3 months that are under the domain of Esav, which means under the domain of Tohu, because Esav. So let's go back to Esav and Tohu. We learned that Esav's source was from the world of Tohu, which was this powerful energy that was too great for the vessels, which is why Yitzchak, he knew that what Esav was doing, but he said, I would rather give the brachos to Esav because his power and potential is so great from Tohu. If I gave him the blessings, maybe he will channel that. I could get him to move all the energy to the power of Kedusha, and he could bring Mashiach and elevate the whole world with his crazy power. Esav has all this raw potential and this light, and Yaakov is from Tikkun. Tikkun is when the light is more diminished and lowered or covered up to fit into this world, to fit into the vessel. And so that's the deeper reason what we learn in Chassidut over and over, why Yitzchak wanted to give the blessings to Esav. And so while Esav in this world, and we learn that everything that is in this world is flipped. We live in a backwards world, literally, and it's like the Yud Hey, right? This is about everything. To explain, whenever something comes from a higher source in this world, it's reversed and it comes as the lowest. So, like in this world, we have, for example, Domain, Tzameach, Chaim, Medaber. We have humans, animals, plants, and minerals. Minerals seem the lowest, but their source is actually higher than plants, animals, and humans, which is why they could nourish. Plant life is nourished by minerals, animals are nourished by plants, and humans are nourished by all of them. You're nourished by something because its source is higher. So what I'm trying to say is that although Esav comes in this world as lower, it actually, his source is way higher, more from a higher place than Yaakov, which is the world of Tohu. And Esav, now we're getting to how this reflects in our life. By the way, it's the same with the female energy. We learned that the female energy comes from a higher source than the male energy. And in this world, from what?
And then you start.
Right, we're going to get to that. Exactly. So the female energy for years seems as a lower energy in this world because it comes from a higher source. And the Rebbe always said that when we get closer to the time of Mashiach, things are going to be back to how they are in their source in this world. It's going to be reflected in a direct way. And therefore, as we're getting closer and closer to the Arab Mashiach, the celebration of the power of the female energy is coming, and that's the source for the whole female liberation movement. And the women's rights movement comes from a deep place of the world sensing the high source of the female power and energy, which is going to be revealed when Mashiach comes, that the Kevet is so together, that the woman comes from the feminine energy is higher than the masculine. And it's even being revealed within men. Men are embracing their feminine nature more because we all have both, and they're not afraid of their femininity. We're more engaging and being okay and understanding the power of utilizing our internal energy, feminine being internal, for simplicity, and masculine being our external focused energy. But that's a whole nother class on that. Anyways, now Esav in our lives. So to summarize, we learned that this is a month of Tevet is Tohu. It's also the month that's under the domain of Esav, but Esav comes from a higher source than Yaakov. In this world, it's reflected as maybe lower. Now, Esav in ourselves is two things. One, it's our body. So our body actually comes from the realm of Tohu as well. So our body seems lower than our soul, but we learn that actually our body comes from a way higher place than our neshama, which is why the neshama comes down into our body to be elevated. The reason the neshama comes down to this world is because she gets elevated by living in this body. Now it's hidden. Now it seems like our body is really limited, really pulls us downwards. But when Mashiach comes, we learn something crazy, that the neshama will, now the body needs the neshama to be sustained, to be alive. But the neshama, even though it's in bliss in heaven, in Gan Eden, all the neshamas that pass away, they will reincarnate back into a body because the body comes from a higher source than the neshama, and the neshama will be flipped. Not the body won't derive its pleasure and spiritual and life force from the soul. The soul will get her life force from the body. It says the soul will be sustained from our body, from our body, and will derive pleasure from our body. That's what's going to be. And this is now takes us to one of the verses in the Gemara in Maseches Megillah, where it speaks about Queen Esther and Achashverosh, and it says that the time that they had intimacy together was in the month of Teves, and it brings down the Gemara that Teves is Yerach, means the moon, the month, when a guf nenem in a guf, when the body derives pleasure from the body. And therefore, in the simplistic terms, it means that it was like planned that way, that like it's because Teves is the coldest month of the year, it's a time for bodily comfort before preheating days, and therefore it worked out that Achashverosh derived pleasure from her body, and it all worked out for her to marry him. So, but on a deeper Kabbalistic level, it's when it's a very bodily, physical month. It's a time when we are bringing down physical vessels to contain this chaos, this tohu energy, so that doesn't lead to shviras hakelim. And it's a month, in the voda this month, is to create physical vessels. One of the vodas of the month is to do the act of tzedakah, the repetition of giving tzedakah. It's not about how much tzedakah you give, it's how many times you do the act. And that's one level of the body deriving pleasure from the body, of another person deriving physical pleasure from our physical act of giving. It's also a time for working on interpersonal relationships and healing our relationships with other people. It's like when we're venturing out into, like we were hibernating for a month, and now we're in Cheshvan, and now we're like going out again and creating our physical interpersonal relationships and healing the elements of our personal relationships with other people. It's a very tangible, physical month. And if I would summarize Teves, it's about creating practical, actualizing our great potential. So we have this tohu great potential inside of us that's being manifest and expressed in this month. We might feel chaotic. We might feel this crazy energy. We might feel out of control or anger or like raging emotions. And we want to take all our potential, all of our like chaotic potential, and actualize it in physical vessels. That's what the avoda is in summary, in very short. And we're going to get deeper into how we do that. But it's about actualizing our potential in actual vessels, taking steps, small steps, one at a time. That's one of the elements of a Capricorn. A Capricorn is an earth sign, so it's a very physical month. So this is a month of practical vessels, and a Capricorn is also very like long-term goal focused. So it's about creating long-term goals and starting to make practical steps, taking one step, I would say like one thing one of my therapists once did is like finding every area of my life. She would make maybe like health and relationships and my own self and my whatever, and making each my relationship, my vodas Hashem, and then what are my goals in each of those areas, and then creating one action item for each of those areas. And we did that, and actually helped me. It was like a tool that really helped me. So a tiny action item. What's the first step I can do for each of my separate goals? Because we have so many different areas and goals in our lives. So that's the practical idea of Esav. So now the first thing we said about Esav the tohu Esav in us is it represents our body, that although it seems lower, it comes from a way higher source, our bodily desires. And the second thing is not just our body, but even the inner child inside of us, the Esav inside of us. You guys want to move so I can see you? I want to see you. I don't want to come my back to you. No, don't worry. You can come. We can all move down a bit. Thanks. Okay, so by the way, one more thing about Esav and the tribe of the month is that, and the zodiac sign of the month is that we said that the zodiac sign is Gedi and Seir. And Esav is connected to, he's called the goat. It actually says that Esav, the first thing it says about Esav, that he was covered in Se'ar, which is the same as Seir, which is also another word for goat. Esav also said, let's go meet at Har Seir, which is the mountain called the goat. And Esav represents the goat because the first mention of goats in the Torah is when Yitzchak instructs Esav to go hunt for me, and he catches 2 goats. But actually, it's when Rivka tells Yaakov to catch and prepare 2 goats. Who needs to eat 2 goats? One person needs to eat 2 goats. And Rabbeinu Bachaya teaches us that these 2 goats actually represent the tikkun of the goat of Esav. So if Esav is the goat, first of all, that's Ayin. But if Esav is the goat, it actually says Esav had like a demonic look, like similar hairy and like horn, like similar to a goat. But if Esav is a goat, the 2 goats represent the tikkun of the goats, because the other 2 goats in the Torah are the 2 goats of Yom Kippur. And that represents taking the 2 goats of Esav. The Esav is like the body and the soul, this like multi-dimensional, this like body soul of Yaakov and Esav, and bringing the goat of Esav into the realm of Kedusha. And so on Yom Kippur, what we're doing when we have the sacrifice of the 2 goats is we're taking the Rabbeinu Bachaya says that, well, he also said that the 2 goats are a sign that he says, bring me the 2 goats so that it will be good for you, so that you'll get a bracha. And he says it will be a bracha for you and for your future children. That's the double goats. And the bracha for all your future generations. And the way that they'll have that bracha is by the elevation of the Esav through this, like the carbon. But in our lives, we don't bring the carbon. It's the tikkun of the tohu energy of Esav. Or all of this averas that come through tohu. Anyways, that was a side idea of Gediyah Izim Tovim. Another thing is, the Gediyah Izim Tovim are actually a hint to Tevet. It's brought down in the Kabbalah that it says Gediyah. First of all, Gediyah is Gematria Tov, and Izim Tovim, the fact that it says they're good, is a hint to the month of Tevet, which is the sign of the goat. So that was a hint to this month of Tevet, where we elevate our. And the double bracha says will be good for you spiritually and bodily. So anyways, that's a little bit on the astrological sign. We don't have time to get more into that today. There's a whole parak of Tanya that speaks about the 2 types of pleasure that come from these goats. Like the pleasure of the tzaddik and the pleasure of the Baal Tshuva. But that's a side thing. Okay, so we have this Esav energy. Now we're going to connect it to anger and to the Shevet of Dan and the tikkun of the letter Ayin. Okay, so the Esav energy in us is our bodily energy that actually comes from a higher source, just like Esav. And our inner, and that's the Tohu energy in us is our inner child. So let's think about a child. The like manifestation of anger, or this like little child, is this like powerful energy, right? Why are they getting angry? There's so much feeling in their body and they can't control themselves. And that's what Shviras HaKelim happens. I have a 3-year-old, and like 5 times a day, like between 2 to 5 times a day, he just like gets into a rage and knocks everything down, all the chairs, dumps all the toys upside down. That is a physical manifestation of Shviras HaKelim. The Shviras HaKelim that happened in the world shattered, because there's so much explosive energy in his body. It can't be contained in his body, so he erupts and he breaks everything around him because he has no vessel to contain it. And so my husband and I had this like really deep conversation a few months ago. We were talking about like our kids and their tantrums, and we were like, the suffering of that, the reason that we suffer, we freak out, is because we're like fighting it, we're resisting it. Also, a lot of times when your kids lose it, or your inner child, every time I speak about children, I'm also speaking about the inner Esav in you, the powerful Tohu energy inside of you, the eruptive, powerful Tohu, destructive, or strong, powerful energy, not neutral, not negative or positive. And so a lot of times we resist it, or we make it seem like my kid's tantrums a reflection on my bad parenting, or I'm not a good person, or what did I do wrong that like our kid is like this, other people's kids don't do this. So we internalize it and then we resist it and we try to get them to stop it. But at one moment we were having a deep conversation. I'm like, when my kid, he's supposed to be doing, he's doing exactly what he's meant to be doing. Kids are Tohu. Kids are from the energy of Tohu. They are this chaotic energy. He's doing exactly what he's meant to be doing. And our job is to be the tikkun to his Tohu. And I'm like, if I can have this higher consciousness every time he's having a tantrum, instead of being stressed and upset or ashamed or internalizing on myself what he's doing and that he's doing something wrong, I'm like, no. I say to myself sometimes, I'm like, he's doing exactly what he's meant to do. He has this crazy Tohu energy. It's erupting. He's doing Shviras HaKelim. And I'm meant to be the tikkun to his Tohu. I'm supposed to create space and give him an outlet, either in a few ways. One is when there's strong, and this past Shabbos, we've been trying to channel a very calm Friday night meals with our kids and like loving, and I have 3 boys, and they were literally, 2 of them, the older 2 were chasing each other around the table, like bothering each other and like screaming, and we were like, come everyone, let's be calm. And it was not working. And I'm like, no, this is tohu energy. They're boys. They have strong energy. They want to run around and chase each other. If I try to make them be calm, that's not the way to be their tikkun. I'm not like by being calm. The way I was like, let's give them an outlet for this. Let's all go on the jump on the trampoline. Let's chase them around the room. Let's all start dancing and shaking out our energy. Let's give them a direction. Let's give them a space, a vessel to contain this tohu so that it's not destructive. Let's give them an outlet for this tohu energy. So they're like the harshness, the struggle at our meal is like when we think, what's wrong with us? Why can't we just have a calm, nice meal? Why are kids like this? And then the tick where we're like, no, they're actually doing exactly what they're meant to do. They're kids, they're tohu. This is perfection. And so there was something that happened a few years ago. My older son was like having like a tohu moment where he was like losing control. He was my oldest, and he was like threatening to do really bad things, and he's like saying really bad stuff, and he was like threatening to do this and that and that, and I was like frozen, like flight mode, freeze mode. And my husband did something so amazing. He went over to him and he just gave him a huge hug, and my son just like melted into that hug. And that moment for me was like life changing. I'm like, wow, imagine we could do that to our own anger, our own any eruptive emotion, any tohu emotion, because the natural thing to do is running away from it. It's like I'm feeling this powerful, overwhelming flow of emotion or trigger, any trigger, and I want to just run away. For my son, I'm like, when he was literally threatening that, I was just like answering. I'm like, well, if you do that, that's gonna happen. This is gonna be your consequence. And instead, what my husband, I guess, like deeply sensed in that moment is that this tohu energy, it's like he's exploding. He doesn't know, he's suffering. He doesn't know what to do with himself. He's feeling this rage in his body. There's no space for it. He's losing control. And my husband kind of like moved towards him and gave him a hug. And the reason that I think that it melted him and he just like melted into the hug and then stopped talking about all the threats he was making was just like there was room, there was space for that tohu energy. So he didn't have to have Shviras HaKelim anymore. Because Shviras HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels happens when there's no room for the energy, when the hot water pours in the cup and it shatters. But if you make a thicker glass to contain that hot energy, then it just sinks into it. And so my son melted into that hug. There was like, oh, there's space for my feeling. Someone is creating a tikkun, that space for my powerful emotion. And there's room for me to feel what I'm feeling. There's room for me to be angry. It doesn't always work. We try with my 3-year-old. It takes a long time. But you ever saw there was like a trending video where like the kid was like freaking out and the father was just standing there. And that's what we try to do when we're actualizing our highest self. So my husband was in his highest self moment. I was like, I just want to run away from that feeling. I'm like freaking out. But the actual answer is like to do the opposite action of what you want to do. You want to run away, but the action item is to move towards and embrace. And that's the tikkun of our bodily anger, a sense of anger. But I think when we speak about Tevet being the month of rogez and anger, to me it represents not just anger, but any erupting emotion. Because anger at its source is like fear, usually. Underneath anger is fear, sadness, pain, or like all the overwhelming, triggering emotions that we experience are that like tohu energy that they flood us, whenever we're feeling flooded. And so the tikkun in this month, or the energy of this month of anger, what does that mean? We have a month to work on our bodily sense of anger. I get dreams, smell, those are all like holy things. What does anger mean? And so I said we have to separate expressing our anger and feeling anger. And so in that moment when my husband embraced my son and he just like, the anger just like melted and had like space, I was like, imagine we could do that to ourselves. Imagine every time I was overwhelmed with an emotion, instead of what we usually do, which is one, as you're younger or when you're in your inner child mode, you just erupt, right? Like sometimes I just yell at my kids if I'm feeling angry. I'm like, why did you do that? Or what, like who did this? Or when I'm an adult, what I do is suppress the emotion. And both of those don't help because erupting causes, when you erupt and express the anger in toxic ways before you have space for it, it's destructive. Anger, that's why anger is like avodah zarah. It can literally just, you say things you regret. It causes a lot of pain and chaos and breaking. You break things. And so that's not helpful. So then as adults, we're like, okay, I don't want to erupt, so I'm just going to bury my anger. I'm going to run away from that. I don't know what to do with that powerful, overwhelming emotion that I'm experiencing, this trigger. I'm just going to block it away and numb. It's so easy to numb these days by like moving to any device that distracts us. What? And substances. So I end up blocking it. And that's not helpful because what happens when you stuff away anger or it erupts in some way. And even if you don't explode at some point, I know lots of people, including myself, who I push with anger and then suddenly I'm just like explode, right? And I'm just like always like out of nowhere. That's not helpful to anyone. Or even if you're not an explosive person, we learn now in so much psychology that storing anger or any intense emotion and not processing it and giving space in your body it comes out in other ways in our body. If you've heard of the book The Body Keeps the Score, he explores that. So if you store that anger and don't address it, we think we're being like greater, but really we see it come out in illnesses and back pain and physical pain and emotional pain and things that we don't even realize because we've not addressed that. And so what is the tikkun? So for me, the first step was what it means in this month of anger is experiencing anger in your body. It's just identifying. It's just identifying, labeling, and finding where the anger is in my body. And that's for me like the hug, like it just gives space. So it's like this erupting emotion, it has no space. Let me just give it some space, right? Count to 10 before I react and just say, where do I feel the anger in my body or the pain or the sadness or the fear right now? Where am I feeling in my body, right? It's in my tightness in my chest. Am I clenching in my fingers or my pelvis or my stomach, right? I'm just like loosening not even trying to change it, just finding where it is, identifying the feeling. How does it feel? Is it burning? Is it sharp? Is it bubbling? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it in my throat? Is it in my eyes? Is it in my breath and my fast and my forgetting to breathe? Just identifying it. And then for me, the next step, so one is identifying where it is in our body and just giving it space, just giving it a name and a room. And then it's embracing it. I think the next step is just giving it a hug and soothing it and comforting it and saying, that is so painful, that is so hard, that is so sad, that emotion is so intense. Let me comfort you. And we can comfort it in different ways. For me, I like to, one of my ways, my favorite way is like when I breathe. Mm-hmm. And the breath, I imagine as I'm inhaling and exhaling, that like my breath is traveling down as like a loving hug to embrace that emotion. So if you breathe with me, I'm inhaling, and this whatever sad, scared emotion sometimes I have in the pit of my stomach or that inner child that I'm trying to lock away, I'm breathing and I'm just sending that breath as a hug to just comfort and hold and send compassion to that scared, overwhelming, angry feeling inside of me. Or I just ask Hashem, I like just breathe and I say, Hashem, like send me comfort. I just say I'm sending you love and comfort, or talking to someone else about it. There's ways to just send love and space and comfort. And then after we've done that, and that, to me, that's experiencing anger, any tohu energy in our body. And that is what this Tevet is all about. We said the Tevet at its core is a physical bodily month, and it's a month of tohu. And I think those two are exactly the same thing, that it's tohu, it is destruct. Tohu is not bad or good. Tohu is this amazing, strong, powerful energy, and we're going to learn soon how it's positive. But now, even when the reason it could be destructive and have shviras hakelim sometimes, which isn't great, but even in the shviras hakelim, right? If that happens, there is sparks. I'll get to that in a moment. But tohu is this energy that's it's just a neutral, strong energy. In its source, it's not bad or good. Esav wasn't born evil. But if there's no kalim, if there's no vessel, you can erupt and explode. And so the tikkun to me of this anger erupting in our body, or any tohu energy in our children or in the children inside of us that we grow with, is to create more space so that it doesn't erupt, it doesn't shatter you. When you make more space for it, you say, I have space to feel anger. Anger, and by the way, I didn't mention this because I forgot to open my notes, but before all this, I tell myself I can't avoid experiencing anger. I used to think that like I'm a tzaddik, I don't have to get angry. Kids get angry, or like Risham, like of course you can't. And then I'm like, what do you mean? Like I'm not a tzaddik, I'm a human being. Being human is experiencing a range of emotion, and one of those emotions is anger. So I can't avoid experiencing anger. I used to literally think before I was married that I don't get angry. I was like convinced that nothing could make me angry because I was so calm and intellectual. And then I had kids and got married, and I'm like, oh. Like I really thought nothing can make me angry. I would get stuck in traffic for hours and like miss my flight and leave my passport at home, and I'll be like, it's all fine, it's meant to be. And then I got really tested with like, Baruch Hashem, the beautiful tests and nisyono of like children pushing their buttons, and now I am the opposite of that, right? I feel anger inside of me all the time. And so the number one thing is not to like think like I'm better than anger, to know that the reason I can't avoid experiencing anger is because I'm created in Hashem's image. And just like Hashem constantly throughout the Torah is Vayichar Hashem, Hashem is getting really mad, I'm also going to experience feeling anger. It doesn't mean I have to act on that anger or say anything about that anger or express it to other people, but the fact that I'm going to experience and feel anger in my body is a blessing. It means I'm human. It means I'm experiencing the full range of human emotions, and one of those is anger and jealousy and pain and grief and fear and anxiety, and all those feelings are going to experience them. So that's first, I guess, is knowing that I'm going to experience it. Number two is allowing myself to create space for identifying it and without judgment in my body, and then embracing it and sending it love and hugs, and then comes the tikkun. So once we've done that, I feel like now only after we've done that, and by the way, the breath is like the power to connect to how we're like deepest self, because neshima connects us to our neshama. And so when we breathe deeply, so count to 10 before we react, and just take a few deep breaths. Send love, or even just breathing on its own allows your body to come back to its soul, to being in a soul consciousness and not just in a chaos consciousness. And so once you've centered, now we can get to the elevation of anger and the tikkun of anger, and to there's a few levels to that. The first level is, let's go to the Tevet of Dan. Okay, this is really cool. And they're both connected, Dan and the letter of Ayin, which is the letter that makes this month, and the Tevet of Dan, which connects this month. Dan, we learned, was the lowest of the Shvatim in their simplicity. It says Yehuda was greatest, Dan was the simplest. But Dan was the largest in number, and they would travel, and the Jews traveled in the desert. Dan traveled last. And the Masechet Reuven tells us, I may have brought this for you in your source, keep forgetting about your sources, that Lefi Shahaya Shevet Dan Maruba Ba'uchlasin, which means population, because they're the largest population. Hu Nosea Bachrona, they traveled less. But Kol Mi Shahaya Ma'abe Davar, and anyone who would lose something, Haya Machzir Lo, Dan would return those objects. So they were like collecting all the lost items throughout the Shvatim and returning them. We're the lost and found department. Hare Hu Ma'asef Kol Machanas L'Sivaisam. That's what it says. They would gather all the people, and they would gather all of the machanos, all of the camps. We learned that they would also gather lost people. If someone got lost, stragglers, they would return them to themselves. And the Chassidut says that they would not only return lost people to their Shvatim, they would return people to their essential self. And Chazal say in Kamar Chagiga, Ezehu Shaiteh Hama'abed Ma Shenotinu. Who is a fool? One who loses what's given to him. Because you have an object, Hashem you're meant to encounter it, you lost it, you're a fool. But the deeper intention of this is not that you lost, just that you lost your object and that's foolish. It's that who is foolish? Hama'abed Hama. This is another Kabbalistic idea that Ma is your power of bittul, of humility, of knowing that everything's from Hashem. And so who is foolish? One who forgets, who loses the Ma, which is your core of your neshama, the chachma, the deepest part of your soul is this chachma, the koach of Ma, the koach of bittul, of remembering that everything that you experience is from Hashem. And that leads to anger, because the reason that anger is, like avodah zara is because the reason you're angry is because either you believe that you should have something, that the person who's doing something to you did it out of their own free will and not that Hashem wanted this exact thing to happen to you, or that something bad is happening to you and you believe that life should be different. You don't believe in Hashem's plan in the world. You believe that you deserve something else rather than believing that Hashem has an exact plan for you. Or if you're angry at a person or something, you're not believing that Hashem wanted this to happen to you. And so that's why anger is like avodah zarah. So who is foolish? One who forgets the ma inside of him, that everything that he is and everything that's occurring to him at every moment is coming from Hashem. And Dan would return those people back to themselves, their core self, to being in touch with their essence. And we learn that hu eza hu chacham, so a fool is someone who loses his touch with his koach of ma, his power of bittul, his knowledge, opening to know that everything is from Hashem. And who is wise? This is connected to the letter ayin. Eza hu chacham, ayin is vision, it's sight. Roa es hanolad. The Chazal tell us who is wise, one who sees Hanolad, which means the future. And this is a Capricorn thing, that it's being able to not be in the immediate and what I have now, but being able to look towards the future. That's the pshat meaning of this verse. And the deeper meaning is, this is really cool. The Baal Shem Tov says, Ezu chacham haroa hanolad, he who sees how everything comes into being. Roa es hanolad, you see how everything is born. Who is wise? The opposite of foolishness. That you are wise when you can sense how everything is coming into being. You can look at everything and see that with every breath that you are being recreated, and the exact scenario that's happening to you right now is being recreated at every moment. So and that could translate into, that can basically is the tikkun of anger. Because if you are the anger happens when you forget, when you're full and you forget that every moment that's occurring, Hashem is recreating the entire world, removing the energy and breathing back in the energy like a pulsation every moment, and you forget that. And when you remember how things are things are being recreated at every moment, you're not angry anymore, because you realize that this was meant to happen to me. This thing that caused me to be so angry, if I can be in touch with myself, and Dan who did that's one thing of Dan and anger, but connect me back to my vision of the future, return me to my inner self, which understands that Hashem is recreating this moment, then I won't be angry. I can recognize that what is the deeper, after I've felt anger in my body, now I can get to my higher tikkun of anger, which is ayin, which is seeing deeply into what this message is. And I could try and see deep into this, whatever it is that made me angry or made me triggered or made me afraid. Let me look even deeper and say, like Devorah was teaching in this art, what is this? What is the deeper message Hashem is trying to send me in this moment? So this is coming from Hashem. Hashem wants this to happen. I don't need to be angry at this person. That's what they do is their business. What's my business is that Hashem wants this to be happening to me right now. The fact that they were the messenger that it came through, that's between them and God. But whatever was happening to me is good because Hashem only wants good for me. And so what is the goodness that's coming to me through this scenario that seems like it's darkness, right? What is the light in the darkness, which is the entire Hanukkah message, which Hanukkah bridges into overlaps into Tevet every year. And so what is the light that's coming to me from this seemingly dark moment? What is the good and message Hashem is trying to send me in this moment that happened to me? What is the point of meaning and beauty in this moment, in this moment right now, which is, by the way, another tikkun of Esav. At the end, I hope I have time to speak about the... it's too much. There was this beautiful teaching. We'll get to that later. So the tikkun of, the summary of done is that, number one, it's the tikkun of negative anger through returning to your core self, through returning to your essence and having a higher vision of ayin. You could see ayin, although it's spelled on ayin, you could say Shira Malos, I look at my eyes up to the mountains and I see that from ayin comes my ayin Yovo Ezri. From where will come my help? From ayin, from the source of the creation of the world. So I can look to the depth of everything and heal my anger that I'm feeling or whatever overwhelming feeling I'm feeling by recognizing and looking for the deep messages that are in this moment for me. What is a message I can take from this moment? It's really hard and it's really challenging. And I think we can only do that after we've created space in our bodies for that anger or for that tohu, chaos energy. Now we can transform that nakuda and find depth and meaning in that moment. And the next idea of done is really cool. Now we're going to transform the highest level of anger. The highest level of anger is a neutral force. It's not a negative force. The negativity of anger that's described, that's avodah zarah, is when we act on our anger and we do what I want to do, my initial reaction before I count to 10, which is I want to do really bad stuff and scream at somebody. That's really negative because that's really destructive. Shvira Sakalim is destroying your vessel. You become someone else. The Baal Shem Tov, there's a story of the Baal Shem Tov where he went to meet with this owner of the big brewery company, and he was just screaming at one of his employees for messing up something big. And the Baal Shem Tov saw him and said, if I didn't know that you were the owner of this place, I wouldn't have recognized who you are. He said, you know me? He's like, I wouldn't have recognized, because when you're angry, you become someone else. You're not yourself. Something takes over you. There's like possessiveness, and it's not to judge, right? It's a natural, it happens sometimes. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It happens to everybody. But but we learn that at its core, that's just the negative is when anger takes over our body and it erupts and we break and we lose control. But the anger itself is a very neutral force that can go just like any other power. It's positive or negative, and anger has a very positive place in our lives. Without anger, there's a sense of complacency. And this is, okay, I'm gonna get really deep now. I learned this crazy teaching yesterday on Tevet that I've never heard before, that Esav and Tohu, Esav comes, it says when he was born, he was asui. Esav comes from the word asui. He was ready-made. And that's what the tohu energy is. It's in the, Esav wants the immediate. He wants right now. I want it to be ready-made. We see this in the story of Esav and Yaakov. Really, a few verses after he's born, it says Esav comes home, he's hungry, and he's like, he says, give me this red soup you're making. And Yaakov says, give me your firstborn. He says, why do I care? He says, Tina ani holech lametz. I don't care about the future. I want what's right now and immediate, in my moment right now. He says, I'm going to die tomorrow. What do I care about my bechorah? Give me the food I want right now. And the next pasuk says something so cool. It says, vayochal, 2 pasukim later, what does Esav do? He lives only in the present moment. He doesn't think towards the future. Vayochal, he ate. Vayesh, he drank. Vayakam, he got up. Vayelach, he goes. Vayavaz, Vayavaz is a bracha, and he spurned the He just gets up and does. He lives from moment to moment without thinking about anything future oriented. What was I talking about before?
Positive place for anger.
A positive place for anger. I know, but I forgot I was going to connect all this. Okay.
Positive place for anger.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted to connect it to what I said earlier. But the positive anger is this. Okay. All right, I got it now. Okay. This is so deep. I literally was up till 4 a.m. just like, I felt like I was like on a trip. Like I was literally just like, what is this information? I had to like go through my body. It was so deep. So tohu energy is the inner child, right? A little child. And there's way more to explore in this. A little child just wants what is immediate and now. That's the inner Esav inside of us, the toe energy. It's just what I see in front of me, what I want right now. The body, our body just is involved. It's not thinking about the future. It's not, and that's the power of anger, by the way. So without this when we're just living in body or tohu or ace of energy, we want what I see. I'm living in what I feel in the moment, what I need right now, what my needs are right now. It's not negative. This is just energy. It's not bad or good. It's a neutral energy. It's just what I want right now. Children, that's the bliss of a child. The joy of being a child is that I don't have to think about my future or it's tomorrow what happened yesterday. Right now, right, I fought 5 minutes ago, but right now I'm happy again. That's why children heal so much from tragedy, little children, because right now they're living in what is in the present moment. The negativity of that, the klipa of that, is the when you're living in the moment. I wasn't even going to talk about this today but when you're living only in the moment, there's no drive, there's no passion, there's no thinking about anything. It's meaningless. It becomes if it's the negative side of that. So the power of that is neutral. The negative manifestation of that is living just a meaningless existence. I'm just, whatever I'm doing right now is what matters. I'm not thinking about, there's nothing else. There's no meaning to life or anything. I'm just living in the moment, like Esav. I'm eating right now. I don't care about anything. There's no future. There's no goals. There's no inspiration. There's no purpose to my life. It's a purposeless existence. That's that negativity of that. Now, the transformation of Teves is Haguf Nena Min Haguf. The body is that experience of just being present. There's nothing, the body experiences life in its moment. And the reason for that comes from a very high source. It comes from a higher place than tikkun. When the energies and the powers are so strong, each one is. My body just is. My neshama is, everything is a means to another end. I'm here for a purpose. I have a higher reason and a purpose. So let's talk about anger for a moment. The highest level of anger is that anger is a fuel for action. Without anger, if you're just living in the higher realms of thought and purpose, we don't act. That's what happens sadly in a war when you're like lofty and you're discussing what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do. The anger propels us to say, right now someone attacked my land, my family, my children, I'm going to attack back and defend. So Dan had that power of simplicity, and that's why we learn in this week's Parsha, this is the Parsha connection, in Vayechi, there is a story that when Yaakov is being buried in Mitzrayim, all the tribes bring Yaakov to being buried in Maris Machpelah. And Esav comes, he hears about it, and he blocks it. He says, it's mine. And they're like, what are you talking about? You literally sold it because you're such a now person. And they're having a whole debate about it. And Naphtali, who's the fast runner, says, he's like, fine, show me the deed where you bought my firstborn rights to be buried here. And that's why I get this last plot of land. And they're like, it's in Mitzrayim. So Naphtali's like, I'm going to run to Egypt. He runs really fast. I'm going to go get the deed. Now, Dan, the son of Dan, is Hushim. Hushim, it says, was called Hushim. He was deaf. But he couldn't hear. And so Hushim can't hear what's going on. He just sees Esav blocking. He's some simplistic person. He's like, and they explain to him what happened. And he's like, what do you mean you're running back to Mitzrayim? Every minute is a shame for the whole Jewish nation because you're not bearing Yaakov. He pulls out his sword. He chops up Esav's head. That's the story. The Medrash says Esav says rolls and it was buried in Maris Machpelah. So that is the opposite of overthinking. Overthinking is like, what's the right thing to do? Is it politically correct to now avenge and protect our land? You just Pinchas, we do what Pinchas did, what Hushim did. That's the opposite action. The anger that's holy, anger for things of holiness, anger to defend someone else, anger not for the wrong things like defending my ego or not believing in Hashem, but anger is a very, very valuable emotion because it allows you to, it takes away the thinking and overthinking and what's right and wrong and just leads to propelling you to act and to do, which is a Teves idea. And that's why the power of Hushim, of just simplicity, was way greater than the high lofty of like, let's start having, they had a whole court case there. And he's like, chop off his head. And we actually learned that Esav's head being buried in Maris Machpelah was the tikkun of the potential of Esav, because the rosh of somebody is their potential, but Rosh Chodesh of every month contains the potential for the entire month. The rosh of something, the head, it contains the potential for everything. So Esav's head was his powerful, holy potential, all the potential of Tohu, all this great potential of what Tohu means. We'll talk with this powerful energy when you can contain it, and being buried in Maris Machpelah was bringing that into holiness, was bringing his potential into the realm of holiness. Maris Machpelah, by the way, is the physical counterpart of Hanukkah, of the Lavrel 8, because it had 8 people buried there, 2 doubles. So that was just, it was bringing it into this infinite power, anyways. Now, if we're going to go into this crazy teaching I had last night, another step, so that's holy anger. It's when anger leads you to action, when you should channel your anger in the moment, your power, using your physical organ in the month, which is your liver, and feel righteous anger when someone is hurting someone else. You should use your anger to not be like, should I say something or not, but stand up for that person and say, that's not okay what you're doing. We should channel our anger to propel us to act when action is necessary. necessary to do things. We should channel our power of this anger to avenge. And the best part of Tanya, it says that when you can't fight your Yetzer Hara, you get angry at it. Your Yetzer Hara, your body, your Nefesh Bahamis, your defense mechanisms. You get angry not at yourself. You're getting angry at the parts of you that are ashamed. At your shame, that fact that you feel anger. You get ashamed. You channel anger at your Yetzer Hara that tells you that you're nothing and worthless, and you're like, go away, you my intrusive thoughts. You get angry at those intrusive thoughts that tell you that you're not a divine piece of Hashem, that you're not worthy, that you're not a piece of infinity. And you channel anger at it, and you say, literally, the words of Tanya are like, get away, because it says, Rigzu, this is all based on the Pasuk in Tehillim, it says, Rigzu va'al techata'u. Be angry and you won't sin. That through anger, it will lead you not to sin. Because sin happens when you let your intrusive thoughts take over, when you let those shameful thoughts that tell you you're not worthy and you're not a piece of Hashem and that you're a nobody, and those let yourself be depressed and get to nothing. And when you can yell at that and say, you are worthy, you are a piece of infinity, get away from me. Don't tell me to do these bad things. Don't tell me to go into coping mechanisms and to go into trauma and triggers. And you can yell. It says to literally say, you filthy, annoying thing, get out of my brain, go away. I have no space for you. Don't speak like that to me. It's our inner voice that speaks so cruelly. I would never speak to my friend like that. You never tell anyone else anything. Don't say you're so fat, you're so ugly, you're worthless, you can't do anything. That mess up was the worst thing in the world. Everyone's gonna hate you from now on. Get out of here. So it says to literally channel your anger at those intrusive thoughts that are coming to you and say, how dare you talk to me like that? I would never speak like that to another human being. Don't talk like that to me. Get out of here. Get out of my brain. You have no space to be. And literally that's the word of the Tanya. It says, you meshukatz, you manuvel, you piece of garbage. Get out of my brain. Get out of my life. I have no space for you. You are coming from total falsehood. None of what you're saying is true. You're garbage. And allow me to access my infinite light. Stop covering on my infinite light. And so we can channel the anger at the Yetzer Hara, at our intrusive thoughts that come and try and make us smaller and bring us down, at other people, at people who are hurting someone else, towards others, and towards anything that's blocking Kedusha, to those who are harming our land. We need to channel anger. If you're just like, I'm never angry, I'm all chill, you can't fight in a war. You can't get rid of the enemies. You channel. When you want to be a good fighter, you channel. You think about the horrific, tragic acts that were committed, and that channels you to be able to have that strength, to have bodily strength, and to do what needs to be done to protect our people and our land. And so anger is a neutral force that should be channeled to the holy things, which is what Dan did through his simplicity and not overthinking. Chushim and Dan were able to be that defensive, do what needs to be done, take action, and not fall into overthinking. Okay, now going back into this complacency of Esav, which is the opposite of that. Complacency of living in the moment. We said that Esav is a soy. It's the part of us that the negative side of it is living in the moment is just meaningless. It's just whatever I'm feeling in the moment, whatever I want to do right now, and it's not living in the higher realm. The holiness of that is really deep. The holiness of that is, we want to do the tikkun. So a guf nenem and a guf is we want to channel that power of being in the moment to something positive, which is the source of, okay, this is a little too hard for me to put into words because I didn't process it up, but the source of that comes from a very high place. In summary, the tikkun of that is being in the moment, not meaninglessly, not without purpose, not living just whatever I'm doing right now is what I'm in the mood of. I want soup now, I want to walk now, I'm going to ignore everything. But it's being able to be present in every moment. And the neshama lives, everything is for another goal. Everything's a means to an end. It says, B'chol Nesecha Yilul Shem Shemayim. I'm eating now, I'm learning, if I'm sleeping, it's to have the strength to serve Hashem. But much deeper, then the fall of that, or I wrote it down. The issue with that, or the lacking in that, is that when you're always goal-oriented, like the soul, and living in soul, and driven to something higher, then you're never present in the moment, because you're always thinking about what this is for. This is for something else. So I'm not experiencing life. It's like someone who's so goal-driven. They're in medical school, and they're when it's work all day, but they don't have a relationship they're never with their family. So just experiencing life and being like, what's wrong? Like, I'm home all day, I'm doing nothing, I'm living in the moment. No, that's meaningless. If someone is like, yeah, my son, he's been home for the last 2 years, he has no job. They're like, well, isn't that great? He's so present in the moment. Like, no, because it's meaningless, it's purposeless. And the other side, you're someone who's driven and only driven. That's the soul, because the soul is always something for a meaning outside of itself. When there's only something that's for a purpose, then you're never in the present moment. And so the tikkun, the depth of Esav's soy, of tohu, of wanting to be in the present moment, is really deep. It's that's, by the way, the childlike existing. A childlike existence, there's no shame, because everything is one. There's like, it's the pre-Gan Eden, pre-Chet Tzedak's consciousness. Before we ate from the Chet Tzedak's, There was only oneness and unity. There was no other. There was no feeling of other. And therefore, this was that high level of living in the moment. And living in the moment in the higher place is not, I'm just doing nothing all day and I'm in the present. I'm just doing whatever I feel like binging right now. But it's actually a tikkun of that, which is that in this present moment, it's not that I need to, that eating right now or having coffee now is holy because it will give me strength to do something good. It's like, no, most of your life is not godly things. Most of your life is the means, seems like it's a means to an end. Like I'm working so that I can have money, but we actually learn that the deepest secret of life, and I've taught this in another shiur about Moshe Rabbeinu, where he wants to come closer to the fire of the burning bush, and Hashem says, no, wait, take off your shoes because hamakom asher ata omed sham, the place where you are, kadoshu. This is literally my favorite teaching from all of Chassidut. The place that you were already standing is holy. You think that you need to come closer, that you need to, this is all a means to a higher end, that there's something greater, there's always something more you need to be doing. But what, and that's also true. There is a higher goal. There's a purpose beyond creation. It's to create a dir bit to find Hashem in every moment. But the truth is that every moment on the way to there, in itself, you can experience the end goal, which is oneness and unity with Hashem and connection and purpose and bringing Hashem into your life in each moment along the way. So each moment in your life is not a means to an end. In its core, there is a nakuda, there's a purpose to every single moment in your life, even if it's frustrating, even if it seems negative, even if it seems dark, even if it seems pointless, like I'm just driving. There is a purpose in that moment. And so you're not, that's the tikkun of the Esav, of the Asoy, of the, I just want to do what I'm doing right now, that childlike existence. The tikkun of that, or the highest transformation of that in Tevet, is basically being present in every single moment of your life, not because it's meaningless, because I'm just doing it right now, but because in this moment there is, you can get the end in the, so it's not a means to an end, and it's not a means without an end. It's the end within the means itself. That within the means, I'm already experiencing a purpose and a point of connection in every moment. I wish I can live this way. Imagine in every struggle, I'm not just trying to change it and say, how do I make this get better? But I'm like, where is the depth and the meaning in this moment? Right now, there's meaning. There's a purpose to this moment that I'm existing. I don't need to be somewhere else to have connection. I can have connection right here. Sometimes we go on vacation and we're like, not connecting, and then in our own house we connect more with our kids. It's not about where you are, it's about finding the connection and the meaning and the purpose and the end goal in that space itself. And yeah, that's like that, like the, yeah, that's really, and if you get really deep in Chassidus, that's what it means, haguf nana min haguf, that the Gemara says the body derives pleasure from the body. The body, where we experience presence, is in our body, and that's why our body comes from this high source, because our neshama is created for a purpose, for a higher purpose, because it's, our neshama comes from a piece of godliness that's an extension of Hashem, that's like a ray of Hashem, but our body, it says, comes and is created. Our body doesn't feel that it even has a creator. Our body feels like it just exists. And our body comes from Atzmas Hashem. And so when we have our body, we connect kibyachol, which means like as if, because we can't understand Hashem's essence, to essence of God, that through being present in our body. So Haguf Nana Meguf is through being present in our body in that moment. Whatever we're doing, I'm washing the dishes and taking out the garbage, I'm 100% in that moment. Experience haguf, the essence guf, which means essence of God, not extension, not higher purpose, just feeling the essence of Hashem in my every moment of everyday life. It's very lofty. I'm sorry I didn't have the right words for it, but hopefully I brought some meaning into all this. Is there any questions I didn't tie together? Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay, that's a really good. So there's Atzmas Hashem, that's infinite, that's no division. This is like one of the hardest questions in Kabbalah Chassidus. And then there's as Hashem relates to the world. So Hashem limited himself afterwards for the desire to create a world, to create an other. And after tzimtzum, after the initial, this is Kabbalah, after the initial tzimtzum and diminishment of Hashem, there is layers, there's Atzilut. And so there's different levels where you can be born from or created from. So everything comes from essence, but then it's channeled through Seder Hishtalshalut, which is the chain of creation. And so we learn that our body comes, or our soul comes from a higher source of this divine tree of life, of the Seder Shalshos, of as it comes down in this world through the tree of life, you come from a higher place in the tree of life than another part. And so the higher you come from the tree of life, the lower it seems down here.
What's our source to understand that women come from a higher source?
It says in the Tevet to Soviet Gever that the female will Eishes Chayil Ateret Baila, that a woman is like the crown on top of her husband's head. But it's not the women and men. It's the female energy and the male energy. The whole world is created with female. We have a whole class on female and male energy, an entire class on like circle, arrow, spiral, literally on the Kabbalistic. The male comes from the the ray of light that comes into the vacuum that Hashem made of the world, and the female comes from the remnant of God's light when he removed himself. It's really deep and Kabbalistic. Yeah, I could find the video. I have to see which week I did it, if anyone remembers. There's a whole, that's like an entire concept of itself. But there is a lot of sources that say that the female, Eishes Chayla, Terra, Spila, woman is the crown, or that Nekewa Soviv Gever, that the female will crown her husband, will surround her husband. So we come from the level of Soviv Klomen, which is the light that's too strong to fit in this world, and the masculine comes from the light that penetrates the world. But it's not women and men, it's within us, we have both energies, and we can't live without both. Because the female energy is what is it's the beauty of in the moment, and the masculine energy is the drive within us to go higher and to climb, and we have to have both. And if we have one, we're just in the moment and we're just never trying to grow and be more, and if we're only masculine, then we're missing out on the moments. And so life is a fusion of both. So I guess to summarize, so hard, this was a lot of random ideas. I have a class from like a few years ago that I could share that like is less all over the place, but yeah, in a summary, we have this month of tremendous power, of tohu energy, which seems like it's negative. We have this month of chaos, of anger, of rectifying our anger, and we actually learned that it's actually a month with so much power, and we in this month have a few different avodas. The main thing is to make physical, tangible acts of goals to contain our powerful energy, and to channel that energy, and then to utilize that powerful energy that we have, those triggers for Kedusha, to find the holiness in that, and to channel that energy towards good. It's like taking your kids' great energy and channeling it. That's this raw, amazing energy. It's not negative. When my kids are running around screaming, like we want to stop them because we're like, this is tohu, but we're like, no, this is amazing. Let me give them a channel for that energy. Let me play with them. Let's jump in, let's dance, let's play. Sports, there's so much amazing. Let's give them ambition. Let's talk about their ambition. So not to try and diminish this energy of rawness and be like, stop screaming, stop running around. I'm like, no, this is amazing. Let's put on music. Let us channel this. Let us run. Let us go out. Let's change the world. And that's that energy. The toe energy is the power to change the world without the end, which is really when Mashiach comes, we'll see that value in that, of the value of our bodily energy. The animal energy in our body is animal. We are going to learn that our animal energy is way higher than the soul. So we want to basically find that energy, not diminish our powerful energy, not diminish our dreams like we said last time, but to actualize our dreams, to allow, say, the more the better, the craziness, let all that craziness out, create outlets for it, be your full self, and create vessels for it, and channel the idea of like finding meaning in those moments. Even in earlier I was saying that even in the Shvir Sakalim, even if we do, right, the world shattered, the previous worlds, what came from that? It wasn't bad. What came from that was sparks of holiness that are now in our world, that are lighting up our world. So even when you do erupt in that moment, that also leads to positivity. If you did erupt, which happens, right? And you had the Shvir Sakalim, in that Shvir Sakalim comes sparks. It's crazy. There's literally sparks of elements of powerful energy that will come out from that. You'll learn messages from it. You'll learn about yourself from anger. And there's so much to learn about yourself, about your triggers, about from your own anger, from what's making you angry. When you're angry, it means you care. It means there's passion. And so you can learn from that. It doesn't mean that you should try to have Shvir Sakalim. It's not meant to happen. We don't want it to happen. But if it does happen, then we have so much wisdom and sparks we can learn from that as well. If anyone wants to add?
Very beautiful because I feel like in a lot of the teachings of Chazal, like anger gets a very, very bad rap.
Yeah.
And usually it leads people who do have anger to feel like there's something terribly wrong.
Yeah.
And there's no treatment for it.
Yeah.
And that it's like
100%.
It's like the
which causes you to like suppress it and feel like a bad person and not. Yeah, 100%.
I wonder why.
No, because the expression. So that's why I think it's so important to differentiate. That's why this, like, hearing this was like, wow, we differentiate acting on your anger and anger to other people, and feeling anger in yourself is so neutral. It's yes, you're feeling anger. You're human. Of course you feel anger, and you feel jealousy, and you feel rage, and you feel fear, and you feel hurt by things, and you feel like you want to possess people, and you feel things that are low. But of course you feel those things. Hashem feels those things. Hashem gets jealous all the time. Hashem gets angry, and we're created in Hashem's image, so we have to feel those things to live, to be alive. And we have to differentiate getting angry, hurting someone else, screaming at someone else. There's a lot of advice for the Rebbe about anger, about like taking deep breaths, pausing. One advice I'll end off with is really cool. The Rebbe spoke to someone who couldn't control her anger, and he said that when you get angry at someone, you have to apologize, and you have to go over to that person outwardly and apologize them. So if you get really good at doing that, you're going to stop yourself from from screaming at somebody, if you know that you're gonna have to go over to the stranger or somebody that you saw and apologize, because it's hard to apologize because our egos. And I had this happen to me once a few years ago. I was in IKEA parking lot, and I was in a bad place mentally, and someone I was already in a really horrible place because I hate IKEA, and someone opened more reasons. Someone opened their car door and bashed my car, which was. And I didn't lose it, but I did say something like, "You literally just blocked my car." It was this girl, this teenager with her grandfather, and as instantly I felt horrible. I said something because I was in a really bad place. I don't know if I screamed at her, but I said something that made her feel really bad. And I saw them in IKEA, and it made me feel horrible about myself for acting in anger, because it's not I don't feel good about it, and reacting or even saying something. And especially because my car is so messed up anyways, it really didn't matter. And I was just triggered. And so every time I saw, she was so afraid of me or wary of me or trying to avoid me, and I felt horrible. So I got up the courage after a really long time to go over to her and say, I'm really embarrassed about how I spoke to you before. It's totally fine. My car is messed up anyways. It was it really doesn't matter. Don't feel bad at all. It's really fine, and I'm really sorry for making you feel stressed. I could see how much stress it caused her. I told her grandfather this. I don't think I told her grandfather this. Anyways, he was so excited. He ran to call her, and they were literally so grateful and so happy, and the tension melted, but it was really hard to do. I literally had to work up. I wanted to, because I knew I did something wrong, but it's so hard to apologize. It gets easier. So if I know now that anytime I react to anger, I'm going to do that, it's going to be a lot easier to not do it initially if I'm going to have to work up the courage. They were so grateful. We became friends after that, and we were talking, but it was very, it's really challenging. So I love that practical advice with the Rebbe, to be if I have to outwardly, every time I speak not nice to somebody, apologize in front of whoever heard it. And me and my husband try to practice that. If we ever get in an argument, we'll apologize in front of the kids. That was something that I really love to do, because if they see you argue, they should also see you repair, because that's how they learn. Of course, couples argue. Kids who never saw their parents argue are never going to learn how to repair. So yes, you're going to argue, but then I'll go in front of my kids and I'll say, how I spoke to Tati earlier really wasn't right. My Yetzer Hara made me speak in a way that wasn't right. I got really upset or angry, and Tati, I'm so sorry. I love you so much, and I never want to speak to you that way. I'll try really hard not to speak to you that way again. And then they learn about repairing. So they learn how to have so that's something that I, over the years, try to do, because I wish, that I saw that, because fighting is normal, but you get to see your parents. I usually don't get to see them make up, because that usually happens behind closed doors. So I think it's really important to make up in front of your kids also. If they, you shouldn't fight in front of your kids, or maybe you should. I mean, not on purpose, but if you do, you should make up in front of them. That's just my.
It makes you realize that you have to do it right then, because let's say there's something here, and you have to apologize.
Sometimes
How can I get everybody together again?
Oh, right, you should try. But sometimes I don't get. Sometimes the next day I'll be like, kids, yesterday this happened, and I'm really sorry, or I'm sorry I screamed at you, and you didn't deserve that. Even if what you did is wrong and you should listen to me, I still shouldn't scream at you, because I don't want to. Because it's not nice to scream. So I'm really sorry I screamed at you. And so if I have to do that, it'll help me control my anger, right? I mean, yeah. So l'chaim, to knowing, what you're saying, that anger is a natural feeling. Expressing it isn't great in negative ways, but the feeling of it, and channeling that towards the positive in this month, channeling it to being angry about our Yetzer Hara, about our mean inner voice, about our not nice inner voice, and channeling it to defend other people and to use that anger. So when you see someone being cruel to someone else, evoke anger and say, how dare you talk to another human being like that? How dare you treat another human like that? How dare you touch that person? They don't belong to you. And utilizing that anger. We're actually supposed to yargiz. It says in the Gemara, L'olam yargiz adam Yetzer Tov Yetzer Hara. You should yargiz, that's bring up your anger of your Yetzer Tov against the Yetzer Hara, against all the evil and injustices in the world. You should get that anger to propel you to act and to say something when it's hard to say something. When you want to be a peacekeeper, you don't want to say anything, but someone needs you to stand up for them right now, or someone needs to say something and no one's saying anything, channel your anger about the injustice of it all. And one of the examples that's given is when your kid does something dangerous, you're supposed to pretend to be angry. You're supposed to channel anger, and it shouldn't come from your ego, it should come from other focused anger. So that's what the positivity is. Thank you for joining. Hopefully you learned something, and I'll see you next week. Have a wonderful